Good evening. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We have a new audio and video system, so thank you for bearing with us. I want to call the Organizational Board of Education meeting of the Avondale School District to order. This is the first meeting of 2022. I hope everyone had a great and safe holiday season. Ms. Brault, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Lucille Washington.
Present.
Chip Tischer.
Here.
Sean Johnson.
Also here.
Barry Lang is absent. David Down.
Here.
Rita Davis. Here. And Kelly Brault, I'm here. We have quorum.
We have a quorum. If you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, moving on to agenda item 2.0 is the organization of the board, and 2.1 is the election of officers. So to my board colleagues, our goal tonight is to select a president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. So what I thought I'd do is kind of open up the floor to discussion, and then we'll come up with a resolution at the end to go ahead and make a motion on those particular four for the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. So I will go ahead and open up the floor for anyone who would like to make a nomination or discussions at this point.
I don't want any of them. Go ahead, go out there like that.
Put it out there.
I'm gonna put that out there.
All right, Mr. Johnson.
I wouldn't mind continuing as secretary unless anybody else has an interest.
Not me.
All right, Ms. Brault, secretary. All right.
I will continue as treasurer unless anyone has a problem with that.
Okay, good. All right, Mr. Down.
What's your fancy?
In talking with Mr. Lang, he would do any role. I'd be willing to take on the presidency if you guys are willing to have me. Mr. Lang has done his 2-year term and he would serve in any capacity after talking with him.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're all okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
All right. Now, vice president. Oops, I did the wrong spot.
I'd like to do that.
I was going to nominate you.
Why?
Ms. Washington?
Yeah, I'd like to
Absolutely. All right.
All right.
find out more about that.
Great. Any other nominations or discussion? So here's what I have so far for president. I have Chip Tischer, vice president, Lucille Washington, secretary Kelly Brault, and treasurer Dave Down. Great. Is there a motion on those four?
I move that we accept the slate as presented.
I'll support.
Great. All right. So we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Johnson, supported by Ms. Davis. Discussion on that.
Just a little bit.
Certainly.
And I'll speak on my behalf only. Reason I'm not interested in one of those nice cabinet positions. Again, this is my 13th and final year on the board. Okay, I'm not running for re-election in November, and I think I want to give somebody else an opportunity to get their foot wet with the opportunities. That's all.
Thank you for that.
Understandable.
Any other discussion? All right, hearing none. Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Brault,
Yes.
Mr. Down,
Yes.
Ms. Washington,
Yes.
Mr. Tischer is an aye. The motion carries. All right, so we move on to agenda item 2.2, which is the committees and the committee assignments. I did send out an email to you guys yesterday to take a look at this. And then I did have a suggestion by Mr. Down, and we can do this either way. We can either go committee by committee, or Mr. Down suggested that if everyone's good with what they're currently serving on for 2021, we can just keep those particular committees as well too. If someone would like to switch, please speak up if you think you want to switch committees, but I think in the interest of time, that was a suggestion that's made. I can take it either way. So however you guys want to go about doing that.
I'd like to continue with the committees I'm currently on.
Okay. I did speak to Mr. Lang and he would like to stay on the policy and the superintendent evaluation committee. So, which are the two committees he is currently on right now. So he did have that preference. And so he's currently on those. So there would be no change there. So anyone else, again, if someone wants to make a change, please.
For MASB, I would prefer to be an alternate.
Okay, so let me go to the MASB one now. All right, so you'd rather be an alternate? All right.
So the current alternates are Chip, Lucille, and David. Either drops to an alternate, maybe one of those alternates would want to step.
Yep.
Lucille?
I'm noticing a trend here.
All right, so you'll
There's not many responses.
step up from the alternate.
Anyways.
Yep, okay, great. That'll be. Okay. Are there any other changes from the current one besides what Ms. Davis just suggested at all?
I am comfortable where I'm at.
Does that work for everybody? Everyone's good? Okay.
Comfortable?
All right, great. And I don't believe we need to make any motion on that at all. So I think those are just the committees.
Yep.
As they stand. Wonderful. All right, great. That was easy, guys.
Right, that was,
All right, we're moving along.
good job, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations to the new board.
We've ever moved through.
That's a record for sure.
Interest of time.
Moving on to 3.0, the superintendent's report. Dr. Schwartz,
All right.
all yours.
Yeah, well, welcome, everybody. Again, sorry for the delay this evening as we got our new technology system up and running. This is our Board of Education meeting for January 10th. I have a few items on the agenda, certainly as we are starting the year under 3.1. Just want to elaborate a little bit about our COVID update. We have started the new year as most places of employment have, with some challenges, particularly around staffing as it pertains to this new surge of Omicron version of the virus that is moving through. And that surge certainly has affected our school districts, UMOs all around the area, that staffing, as well as industry, has been a concern. And we have been working to keep certainly schools open. The state has certainly reinforced that schools stay open during this time as much as possible, and we are doing that. Much like the districts around us, you know, we are trying to fill in situations where there are sub shortages, where we have staff that are out. We have 37 staff, many of which are teachers district-wide that are out currently today. We are plugging in interventionists, and we're plugging in support staff where we can to keep the continuity of classrooms going. And we will, our goal is to continue to do so. We want to stay in session. We know that going remote, going virtual, not as beneficial to students. We've been down that road before. And certainly with our current level of student attendance over this last, well, since we've come back from the holidays on January 3rd, our student attendance has ranged, and again, this information is in your packet that I gave you, anywhere from the high 70s to the mid 80s% in attendance, which under the circumstances has been really good. When I talked to some counterpart districts that have gone remote or virtual over last week and into this week, districts like Oak Park, Southfield, Pontiac, their attendance has been maybe 40%. Is what I'm hearing. So, you know, again, you can gamble and go remote, and we'd have what seems to be half the attendance. And again, districts, you know, we've talked daily in terms of the districts on our borders, Troy, Rochester. It's the same situation there. I mean, they are using all their resource staff to plug in for their, for their vacancies, their sub shortages. We're told that this will be about a week or two until we start to get to the other side of this from a staffing perspective. One good note that came out 45 minutes before our meeting here tonight is the MDHHS has now officially adopted the CDC changes of quarantine length. So going from a period of 10-day quarantine to 5-day days, which cutting that in half, that will help in terms of our staffing when we're not having staff out 10 days, but 5 days. So that certainly will help alleviate some pressures as far as that's concerned. But our staff on a day-to-day basis has been anywhere from 10 to 15% out. And some days that 10 or 15% is concentrated in one or two particular buildings, which creates some challenges. It's not always as spread out as you'd like it to be spread out, depending on, as this virus goes. But we're making it work. And I have to commend our staff because our staff is working very, very hard to help keep our operations going. We have staff that have been working on their prep periods to account for shortages. And it's tiring. It certainly isn't a long-term strategy by any means. And we're hoping that it's not. We're hoping, like I said, within a week or two that we are on the other side of this, particularly with the quarantine changes that have been enacted tonight and communicated tonight, that will again make a difference. But we are offering testing. We had about 80 people show up today for COVID testing right here in the board office in the morning. So we are doing the test to stay method, which, when you come in, you get tested. If you're negative, you go to school, and likewise the same with staff. So any school-based exposures, we're having folks test here in the mornings. And then we can proceed from there in terms of whether they are quarantined or they go to class or how that goes. So today was our busiest day yet, again, with about 80 tests this morning. And that has gradually picked up from last week in terms of the numbers coming into test.
So strictly for the students and staff?
So
Or
it
is
is
that
for
gonna
students and staff. Yeah, it's for students and staff. It's for our athletes so that they can stay in school, stay in competition.
Dr. Schwartz, can I note, students and staff who have been identified as a close contact,
Yep,
a school-based close contact?
correct. So, so that has been, working, and again, today was a rather large volume day. We'll see how this week plays out with if we have continued volume of that extent. How that goes. With events, we have, as far as protocols go, we are, for the time being, going with the state superintendent recommended 100 capacity. So any events that we have participant-wise, that includes spectators, up to 100. So with athletics, that boils down to about 2 per athlete that would be allowed to be a spectator currently within sporting events. So
Dr. Schwartz, does that include middle school too? Is that all?
that includes everybody,
That includes everyone? Okay.
all events. Yep. And of course, we are from a protocol standpoint, reinforcing social distancing as much as we can, hand washing breaks, even though, that gets to be time consuming to have hand washing breaks through the day. It's something that we just have to do to, again, minimize the impacts. So, but again, with the current COVID situation, I do want to underscore that it has been taxing on our staff. They are working overtime to fill in for their colleagues who are out. again, subbing on their prep periods and so on to keep the consistency going, to keep kids in school. Again, and folks don't understand that, because I've had a lot of questions about, well, why don't we just pull up the tent stakes and go remote? And it's not like flicking a switch. It's not like we just say, okay, we're going remote. There's a lot of implications that come with that. First of all, folks think that remote is like last year. It is not. Remote instruction is altogether different than last year. The rules the state has set have changed. So we cannot abide by the same remote rules that we were under last year. If we go remote, you are online from bell to bell. There is no asynchronous time. There are no office hours. There are no breaks throughout the day. As a student, as an instructor, you are online from the beginning of your school day to the end of your school day. And that, I would argue, is more laborious than just being in the classroom as a student and as a teacher. And I don't think anybody wants to go that route. So folks need to understand, again, the rules have changed. It is not last year's rules for remote. The legislature has not given any inkling that they are going back to the rules that were in play last year. So plus we also have special education servicing implications that come with going remote. You know, so there's a lot to it. It isn't just like we flick a switch and okay, tomorrow we're remote and it's seamless. There's a lot more to it than that. And certainly for the districts that have gone, as I said, in terms of attendance, where those folks are getting 35, 40% attendance, we're getting 78 to 85% attendance being in seat. So again, we are working to weather the storm, to keep operations moving, to keep kids in school and keep that continuity going as much as we can. And again, hats off to staff for helping us to do that. Agreed. Questions from the board?
I just like to applaud actually the efforts from the administration and the staff from trying to keep everybody safe. Everybody, I think, has a lot of people have an understanding of how important it is to have kids in seats and the impacts of what it would look like to go back to remote. So every effort that we can make or take to keep kids in classrooms is optimal. So I just applaud the efforts. No, it's not easy. And like I said, my wife and I just got the boosters on Friday and we were down for a couple of days. So it's tough when you spread that across the entire district. So I just would like to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, again, going remote is a last resort. We can, everybody asks, what's the magic number? What's the magic number for us to go remote? And I'll say there is no magic number. The point of going remote exists when we no longer have resources to plug in to fill the gaps. There's not a tangible number I can pull out of the air and say, well, when this school gets to this number of people out, then we go remote. It's not like that. It's when we have exhausted all of our available resources to put into classrooms and there's no more to plug in. And that's different from place to place to place to place.
Can I get a clarification on the 5-day versus 10-day quarantine? Is that only for if you've been exposed or is it also if you have COVID and are asymptomatic? Can you explain that a little bit further?
So I don't have that in front of me. As I understand it, it is if you've been positive, but you're asymptomatic, then you're out 5 days. You test on day 5 up to day 10. You can return to school with a mask at day 6 if you're better at day 5.
Is that just for vaccinated people or for unvaccinated?
I
as
think
well?
that's for anyone. Again, I've got to digest that. Again, it came out 45 minutes before this meeting, so I need to digest that information.
Dr. Swords, if we do perhaps get ourselves into a corner and we have no staff and we do have to shut down a building like an elementary, how long would it take to get us up online? Or would we just close it down for a week?
No, what I foresee happening is that if we had to go remote, there would be a day that students would have no school. We would then set up distribution stations for laptops so that families could come in that day, get a laptop assigned to them, sign it out, do all that, and then instruction would begin the next day. So while that distribution of technology is taking place, the teachers would be working then to transition in their lesson plans to Google Classroom and so on. So they would be ready to pick up then that next day to move forward remotely. But we would have one day where there would be planning on the part of the teachers and distribution of devices to the kids and families. But I'm hoping never to exercise that.
Sure.
Would they allow then the teachers to teach from home remotely? They're asymptomatic and they're fine, and they just have to quarantine, and that's why they're not in school. That day.
Perhaps.
So perhaps could they teach from home?
Perhaps.
In that worst case scenario.
Worst, yep, and that's the worst case scenario. Right, right. Any other questions?
Well, because in our packet, Dr. Shores, we got the COVID procedures and protocols from December.
Yeah.
So that'll be updated per the recommendation this
So
morning.
that will be updated. Yeah, so the information in your packet on the protocols is based on the 10-day,
Right.
which was current up until 45 minutes before.
Agree. No, no.
Right.
That's completely understood.
We will be issuing new guidance per what came out tonight.
Okay.
Yep. Other questions? All right. Thank you. Moving on to 3.2, in your packet, you've seen a course proposal for our Gate Magnet School for a life skills course. And this is a course that is proposed to be plugged in to assist with some ELA skills. You'll see a lot of writing embedded in there, as well as some financial math. It's kind of a well-rounded course of life skills, skills that you need as you're going through adolescence and into adulthood. And this course is also meant to assist with offering more opportunity of students, particularly as we look to transition from trimesters to semesters, and giving more in terms of choice in the schedule. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Martin and Rachel Breeden, who are going to kind of bring us up to speed with some of the details behind this course proposal. So Ms. Martin, I will turn it over to you and Rachel.
Thank you, Dr. Schwartz. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep, we're good.
All right. So today we're going to present our proposal for our life skills class, which seems very self-explanatory. However, we're going to dive a little deeper into what meaningful opportunities we're going to have for our students to engage with some real life skills, mainly to include some practical hands-on opportunities for our students, all the way from sewing, learning the basics of sewing, to some conflict resolution. So Rachel Breeden was one of our middle school teachers that brought this to me and suggested it. So her and I collaborated to create this proposal, but she's going to go ahead and take you through it, and then we can answer any questions you have at the end.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. And I just want to confirm, can everyone hear me as well?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm just going to kind of summarize some of the items in the proposal that you have before you. Firstly, we want to acknowledge that math, reading, writing, all of these core subject areas, they don't really need justification in why they belong in schools. We impart this knowledge on students regularly every day. with rigor, acceleration, and focus. But one of the most essential aspects of success in life are eliminated from the equation in traditional education, and that is life skills. And teaching those life skills within our curriculum is of utmost importance so that our students can bridge that gap between school life and real life, and so that they can just become more productive citizens in our society. There's a great deal of research and literature that supports the idea that life skills are a necessary part of education. And you can review all those references in the proposal. I won't go through and read each one to you, but they are there. And specifically for our gate magnet school, we need this for two main reasons in addition to those that I just listed. So first, because in the upcoming school year, it's highly likely that we're going to switch from a trimester schedule to a quarterly schedule. And we need more classes to fill the extra time that is allotted in a quarterly schedule. So that's one reason that we're proposing this class. Our second main reason is because our gifted students are known for needing these skills specifically. Gifted characteristics often include having high sensitivity and extra high expectations of themselves and of the people around them, feelings of perfectionism and inadequacy that come with the need for perfectionism, need for consistency, high anxiety, an idealistic sense of justice, and little concern for social norms, and a lack of teamwork as well. We recognize that many students have these traits, but it's particularly heightened in a gifted population. So those are our two primary reasons that we're looking to introduce this class to our gate magnet school. So the course, as I said, would be a quarter-long exploratory option for GATE students in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And all GATE middle schoolers would be expected to take this course at some point before leaving GATE in 8th grade. So they could take it as a 6th grader or as an 8th grader, just as long as they take it at some point. So every student would receive this class because that's how important we feel it really is, and because it really does help to fill in for that quarterly schedule as well. Some of the objectives would include CPR first aid certification through the American Red Cross program, as well as the American Red Cross certification for babysitting basics, which include things like responsibility, emergency response in a babysitting situation, age-appropriate activities, and how to start a babysitting business, because this is the age when many students start to help out or start to babysit on their own. So we feel like this is a really important skill as well. Some other objectives include budgeting and understanding some real life examples of personal finance, written and listening skills, and all kinds of communication skills to include verbal, nonverbal, email, especially this is something our students are doing even now. And believe me, they could use some lessons on how to write an appropriate email. And the students will learn how to make responsible decisions and resolve conflicts appropriately and effectively. They'll also learn how to prioritize and manage tasks, and how to study effectively and efficiently, how to plan ahead when projects are on the rise. And they'll also learn skills to be self-sufficient and learn healthy and productive habits as well. So we include a list of standards, and we focused in on including the 8th grade standards, although the only reason we did this is because they are applicable in every grade level. It would just be a little redundant to include the exact same thing for 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, but these scope across the middle school grade levels. Coursework would include inviting guest speakers in that have expertise in areas such as finance, or food safety, food preparation, CPR, first aid, all of the areas that we've talked about in our objectives. We also want to include a great deal of hands-on activities and real-life scenarios, role-playing, educational games and simulations, and even debating. Course materials, we're looking at primarily the 7 habits of highly effective teens, as well as how to be a person, and of course the American Red Cross online courses, as well as a few others that we have included. The cost that we're looking at is basically a one-time cost for the books that we would order, primarily the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. The American Red Cross course would be $35 per student in order for them to receive that certification. And the Babysitting Basics is another $45 per student to receive that certification. Our units that we have planned thus far include planning and prioritizing, so using their school agenda or planner, managing their assignments, time management. We would also have a money management unit, a communication and maintaining relationships unit, emergency preparation. This is where our CPR and babysitting basics courses would fit in. A self-sufficiency unit as well, which would include things like basic sewing skills, some basic laundry skills, outdoor survival basics, and even food safety. And then, of course, we would include a summative assessment that would integrate all of the aspects in our objectives and content. And there is a sample summative assessment that we've included at the end. Of course, this is just a sample, something that we are kind of looking at doing, but that would incorporate many of the skills and see if the student is able to answer and produce an answer for the several different scenarios included. So that's it, and our references are included at the end as well. Any questions?
I have a question. For the certifications, who would pay for those? Would we pay for them, Avondale, or would the students pay for it?
So that is something that I've been in discussions with Colleen Brunei about the curriculum department supporting that as a recurring cost of the class.
I have another question related to the certifications. I was curious if those are required for students to do, and if they're graded, pass fail, or how those work in terms of the course itself.
Well, as far as the certification, yeah, it's pass fail, but I've never been part of a CPR class, and I've been a part of a lot that you haven't passed. So I would be, it's really just if you can follow along, you can and practice with them, you can do it. You know, right now it would be an online CPR course through the American Red Cross where you do most of it, 99% of it online, and then the student would have to follow up to go in person to the location to get their to produce the final actual demonstration to get their certification. But, you know, Rachel and I were talking about Rachel becoming she was interested in becoming an American Red Cross trainer and pursuing that on her own. So that's something that, you know, her and I have discussed because this is something that's important to her.
And then if that were to take place, then they would no longer have to go to an offsite location in person because I would be a certified trainer, and that would eliminate that need for them to go elsewhere to finish up.
Great. Another unrelated question that I had was, what's the number of sections that you anticipate having per semester, and are they mixed grades or is it a single grade? I wasn't really clear on that.
Sure, sorry. We do mixed grades typically, and Ms. Martin, you can correct me on this, but I don't think we would be limiting as far as what grades could take the class in a certain section. But as far as how many, I'll let Ms. Martin answer that question.
So we do a lot of our scheduling based on, for at least the exploratories, based on interest and if we can run the class. So we might have many exploratories offered, but you know, maybe we don't have as many for like an advanced art class, and so we don't end up running it because it wouldn't be fiscally responsible to do that. So we would have a minimum amount, and we would make sure that, you know, at least whether it's, you know, at least 17, 18, 19, 20, and we would get that. But, you know, that's part of making it a requirement, is that it would likely fill at least one section of it per year, just based on how many kids we have each year. But we also made it flexible to do it within those 3 years, because we do have students that take band 1 year that takes up a whole, you know, length of exploratory, and then it really limits what options they can do afterward. So it's really an opportunity for, I guess, to benefit the student, where if they want to take one try out band and then the next year do the exploratory of the life skills, then they can do that after. They don't have to do it within a certain year.
If they have band and a foreign language, would it still fit into their schedule eventually, or just curious from that perspective, since it's required?
So they would have to do, like, one of those would have to give way, but which would naturally happen because we do have other required courses such as Project Lead the Way in 6th grade, where they wouldn't be able to take 2 year-long courses as exploratories anyway.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Other questions for Rachel or Kate?
Great job, guys. Thank you.
Thank you
Who's
both.
gonna come in and teach us how to sew?
How to sew?
Yeah.
I can do buttons.
Miss Martin, I don't think you and I have had a chance to talk about that, but I know how to sew.
I know, I'm joking.
I got
I
it.
know how to sew. I just feel like our kids don't, so that's all.
I got you covered on when you cover buttons, Miss Martin. Give me a call.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna invite you in. Miss Breeden, you didn't have a chance to talk a little bit about the students that approached you wanting this class as well.
Yeah, so the idea for this course, I just wanted to take a second and share that the whole idea behind the life skills course was me seeing the need as well as the interest in the students that I currently teach. So I already try to incorporate a little bit of these things in my regular courses. I teach English language arts and social studies. I also teach a Project Lead the Way 8, which some of you came in and were fake patients for me. So thank you very much again. That's still very memorable for them. But there are things that I like to do, such as in social studies when we're studying ancient Egypt, I incorporate a cooking day and they learn things like how to chop a shallot or how to clean a leek or, what temperature you have to cook things to. And those are the classes, the ones that incorporate those life skills are the ones that they have an extremely high interest for. And it's the ones that the next year when I see students again and I start teaching it to the next group of students, my past students always say, oh, that was the best day. I still remember that lesson in that class. So the whole idea for this came from our students, really. So
Good.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a question.
We aren't taking questions at this time. There's a portion in our agenda for citizens' request to address the board, and then we'll take your question at that point.
We have a good amount. I know looking all right.
All right, sorry about that.
So thank you, Kate, Rachel. We appreciate that. There will not be an action for this curriculum on tonight's meeting. Just a reminder, the curriculums typically are the following meeting is the approval or the request for approval. So that will be on next board meeting agenda. If there are questions in the interim for either Rachel or Kate, just let me know as you continue to review. And this will be on our next board meeting agenda for your consideration.
Great. Sounds like an awesome class.
All right, moving on to 3.3 is our school of choice proposal. We began this conversation at our last meeting, if you remember, regarding a concept in which we were going to, which we are looking at school student achievement data and looking at what that has been telling us, particularly student achievement data within our COVID environment. And with that, we're noting, again, with students being remote for the extended time that they were, looking at those trends, a typical student is about a year behind. We noticed that also with our school of choice subpopulation, when we start to look at achievement data from that group, some are almost up to 3 years behind with that. So as we step back and we look at typically how we've done school of choice, which has been across the grade levels, looking at space availability within classrooms by and large, accounting for what we anticipate movement out of the district, and then bringing that proposal to you based on that. We're now bringing to you a proposal that is looking at really establishing kind of a 3-year gap per se. So students have, we can concentrate resources within particular grade levels to help get students caught up faster in preparation of being on grade level for when they make a transition to middle school or when they look to make a transition to high school. So with that being said, the concept, again, I'm just refreshing your memory, is really looking at opening spaces in K2. I'll say freezing spaces except for siblings in 3 through 5. So we can concentrate again resources at the K2 level. And then in middle school, accepting in grade 6, but then backing down on grades 7 and 8. Again, concentrating resources, having moving with those kids as they move up to being on grade level into high school. So, so what we're bringing to you today is the actual numbers set to that proposal. Those, you'll see a couple of different charts. So Julie, if you can put up, we put a couple of things on. One is what our enrollment looks like currently. So we have a snapshot of our enrollment, which I'll put, if you can put the snapshot of our enrollment up first, we'll look at that, which is this sheet here. Thank you. So so this, as of Friday, are our current numbers in each of the buildings. So again, in your packet, this is our current, when you look at by school, the number of sections, that's how many classes or how many teachers are in each of those levels. How many students are in seat versus virtual. So you see in seat numbers, and then how many are in virtual that are in the red number. How many are school of choice versus residential. So you have those numbers in each of the sections, and then of course a totals column, which sums that up with the total numbers in each building. So this is current where we're at. You see Auburn is at 371, Deerfield at 317, Woodland at 367, middle school at 657, Graham 358, the high school at 1039. As you scroll down, you can see Gate at 233. Our preschool at 113, DCI is at 437. And then you see our numbers of virtual that are in red currently that are in virtual education. So we have 106 currently. That number of requests, particularly at the high school, has gone up since last Monday. We've had, with the current surge of the COVID virus, we've had particularly more in the way of high school that are requesting second semester being virtual. And of course, this virtual is through a third-party vendor. They are actual courses provided by a third-party vendor that they are working with through that semester. So it is not their classroom teacher doing remote work. This is third-party vendor provided coursework, courses that students are going to be taking second semester. So we have had an uptick in terms of those requests, certainly as we've come back from the holidays. So this gives us a total snapshot of kind of where we are at in space and time with our current enrollment. And our enrollment, frankly, has been trending well, I'll say, which is different from some of the testimony you'd be getting from districts around us that are losing students, we are holding our own, which is good. I mean, knock on wood that continues, but I think certainly from the offerings of virtual that we afford folks, the fact that, we continue to try to stay in person and keeping operations going and plugging in interventions as we can and all of that, we are certainly holding on to our enrollment, which is very positive. And typically at a time where we see some decreases, usually from the fall count to the spring count, we typically see some drops through that period, particularly after the holidays. People move during the holidays and so on. We've not been seeing that trend per se as we typically have in years past. So that's good news. All right. So Julie, if you can transition to the other, which is the SOC proposal. So this has a lot of numbers on it, as you reviewed, and I want to thank Ms. Monroe, who's done a yeoman's job on this, has put a lot of work into the tabulations in this and subsequently into the proposal, which we are bringing to you tonight. So in this gives us now you see here the numbers are a little lower, like Auburn is 288, Deerfield 267. So what this chart illustrates are the school sizes if we were doing straight line projections, moving each grade level up with their current numbers, what they have, but taking no school of choice. So this is school of choice neutral. So these would be the numbers we'd be looking at if we shut down school of choice, essentially. So this is almost like zero-based budgeting. All right, so you start with the base and you move from there, okay? So what this is showing is, again, our numbers of sections in purple, our current school of choice in attendance that have been with us this year, the percentage of school of choice in that particular grade level in each school, our resident number in each of those sections, and then the subsequent residential percentage in each grade level in each school. So you can see how the numbers parcel out to show what that school of choice versus residential percentage is in each grade level in each building across the board. So we take a look at those numbers. We take a look at current space availability in each of the sections. We also look at numbers of classroom spaces available in each of the buildings. And we also look at that 28% mark in terms of overall school of choice in the district, because the board has felt strongly about not really exceeding that percentage, but trying to stay to that 25-ish% arena for school of choice in the district. So we've taken that all into account and then plugging in what that would look like and staying consistent with that from that student achievement methodology, I'll say, of school of choice, concentrating in K through 2, grade 6, siblings only in grades 3, 5, 7, and 8. We also account for in these numbers, any given year, we lose 5 to 7% of our student population to move outs. We lose them due to, you name it, families move. There's, divorce situations. There's myriad of reasons why there's movement of families and students through the year. But typically when we go back years and look at trends, we typically lose on any given year about 5 to 7%. Okay, so we know with that 5 to 7% loss, we utilize that percentage of a number to backfill with school of choice, so that financially we are, staying stable with FTE. So we've taken that into account in the numbers and in the proposal as well. So Julie, if you scroll down to the bottom, you can see in the box where it says SOC Proposal, to the right-hand side there, the orange column, well, actually it looks yellow on the screen, it looks orange on your computer screen. But that is what school of choice slots we took in last year. That's what the board had approved last year. In blue, you'll see the 22-23 proposal. So you can see that for TK in kindergarten, we have raised those numbers. Likewise, in first and second grade, again, to perhaps add additional sections as needed, but less so than at 3 through 5. We've established a number of 30 for 3 through 5, labeling it siblings only. We have to give a number. I don't think we'll get 30 by any means. We'll get a fraction of that at best, but we can accept up to 30. This just gives us room to be able to accept siblings. I don't think we'll get 30. That would be a huge stretch for us to get that. But we've got to identify slots for them to slide into. Because again, we don't want to split families where we take their first grader, but not their fourth grader. Families aren't going to come if you're not going to accept both kids in the family. And so if you look at the middle school, we've identified 56 slots that we would accept. And then 20 and 7 and 8, same rationale, siblings only. I don't think we'll get 20, but then again, we've given us a buffer to be able to do so. And then high school would be the same as we've done it previously. We took 65 in last year. We would up that to 75 this year. We are adding the new accelerated pathway into the mix. And we certainly think we can squeeze that in the high school by adding, 10 more, adding that additional pathway. We certainly have the space, staffing to accommodate for that. So while you see in the far right column where you see the 2021-22 total approved 275, and then beneath it you see the 321 figure for 22-23. Keep in mind that the siblings only portions, we won't get that. So the number in actuality will be less and more closely financially to that 275 number than it will be the 321 number.
And
So,
Dr. Schwartz, refresh your memory. So you said it'd be closer to that 275 number realistically. Are we going to realize all those, or then we have percentages that were 60 to 80% or?
Yep. So of the number, thanks for bringing that up. Yep. So of the number that we generate to go out for, we typically, again, looking back historically, we get about 70% of that number. So we go out for that 275 number. In actuality, when it comes down to who's in the seat or how many are in the seat, it's really about 70% of that number that we realize that actually show up.
Okay.
Because don't forget, when people apply for school of choice, families are often applying for more than one district. So they might have an application into Avondale. They also have an application into Waterford. They might have an application into, West Bloomfield. So, and then they choose at the end of the summer. So we don't realize that whole number, but we do about 70% has been our trend.
And I'm sure you guys have worked out these numbers from a building capacity standpoint, where where would we stand if we, for some reason, realized all these? Are we close there?
So so from a building capacity standpoint, we would be able to accommodate this.
Okay.
I would give the caveat, however, that unlike where the board has acted before, particularly with elementary, is that if we look to evenly disperse school of choice students amongst the 4 elementaries, we would have an issue with that because our buildings are not the same.
Right.
Woodland is considerably smaller classrooms, less space than, a Deerfield or perhaps an Auburn would be able to accommodate. So if we're going to approach it from an even distribution standpoint, then we would run into problem from a capacity standpoint.
In a perfect scenario.
So this number would allow us to distribute those students amongst the elementaries in a way that would maximize that capacity based on where, taking into account their current situations individually.
So this would allow our students that are behind the opportunity to catch up. Is that my understanding?
That's the theory. That's the concept. Yeah.
With the current staff that we have right now, if there are no changes, do we have the resources in place to support this change?
We do.
Okay,
Now, I say that because we may have to shift people,
right.
may have to shift somebody who's teaching upper L right now to lower
To
L.
lower level.
And we may have to shift interventionists, cluster them more appropriately to the levels that we're taking students in at. But yes, they just there might be some reassignments.
And the siblings only, is that siblings only of applicants or are we taking siblings of current students as well?
So these are, well,
Yes.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
The current
Both.
school of choice.
Yeah.
And now their sibling we'd have to take a look at that.
Okay,
But yes,
wondering if,
Mm.
okay.
again, we don't want to split families. Our goal is not to split families. Ms. Monroe. I'm
I
gonna
just
have,
have just a couple of points of clarification that may help with some of the questions that were asked. So Mr. Tischer, for example, when you had asked about the percentage that we had realized from applications of school of choice, a variable that I'd like the board to consider is that we had a waiting list that we were unable to approve all of the applicants for in grades K and 6. So there were an excess of applicants in both kindergarten and 6th grade this previous year and in previous years to that, based on the previous numerical values of seats that were allotted per grade level. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah.
The other variable that may help to understand or kind of put this in perspective is, Julie, could you go up all the way to where it says 10th grade class of 2025? If the board could look over to the right at the total, you see that number 327. That's our largest class currently that's seated. K through 12 as of next year. So these are this year's students moved up a grade. Are you with me?
Mm-hmm.
Given that the thought process is that 327 is around our largest current capacity based on staffing, resources, locations, lockers, cafeteria at the high school, and then work your way down. If you look up at the kindergarten, so if you can go up, Julie, for me. If you see where it says kindergarten 2035, so that's that class coming into kindergarten. These are our 41 current TKers. This year we had 235 resident kindergarten students. So if we took, let's say we had the maximum that we had this year, and with pandemic, we really don't know exactly how to estimate our incoming kindergartners, and that work is starting right now. But let's estimate that we have between 200 and 230, and we're able to take in the seats at TK and kindergarten. what you'll see in that proposal of 60 kindergartners then is the aim of filling 4 TK sections, both between resident and school of choice, but then also establishing the groundwork to be able to have a larger class from the beginning, move up, keep families, retain families, and other families move in or move out. But we're starting with a larger baseline, and then they're kindergartners who have gone through the Avondale curriculum and then go to first grade, second grade, and so on. The third number that would be important to look at is the 6th grade number. So that current 6th grade is coming in at around 236. We, with the support of the middle school, were able to go through first physical capacity, so cafeteria, lockers, classrooms. So without changing the proactive climate and culture items that are in place at the middle school, if you guys remember, if the board remembers, excuse me, the green hallway, the blue hallway, the red hallway separated by grade levels.
Yep.
If we don't want to change that DNA of the building. The common spaces are electives, cut throughs in the halls. We want to make sure that we contribute to positive school climate and culture. So really that tipping point is calculated in with that 56 number of applicants that would be able to be supported at the 6th grade level with current staffing, current lockers, current seats in cafeteria.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
The caveat that Dr. Schwartz shared about the siblings is at the end of the day, we don't want to be in a position where we can't accept a kindergartner, a 6th grader, or even a high school student in a pathway because we don't have enough numerical values in the sibling options. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I concur with Dr. Schwartz that I doubt that we will reach 30 district-wide siblings in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. However, it is unpredictable, and we'd rather err on the side of flexibility to be able to keep families all saying yes to an entire family is more successful, not only from an achievement point of view for the family and from a financial point of view as we regulate staffing, but also a family won't have to say no to everyone. Like, you don't say, okay, yes to I'm going to send my student over to this district and then this other district. They're going to stay together.
So quick question. In the past, we've split out the elementary schools and have had specific numbers for those schools. So do we have any maximum numbers on the specific schools in terms of that and what the capacity is? And also, what is the process for those families? Do they get to say, I want my kid at Woodland or Graham, or do they get to specify until that school's filled, or do we have the potential for all 60 new kindergartners to go to one of those schools?
So first and foremost, the lottery is built in a way that is approachable and equitable for every applicant. Because of that, an applicant cannot give preference to building when there are multiple buildings for the same grade level. However, Julie, can you go back up for me a little bit? For example, if you look at the current 2nd grade at Auburn Elementary, and I guess, again, these are our 1st graders that are going into 2nd grade next year, we know that we have 53. What happens is we then look at our contractual limits, and then our space, open up the number of seats, and then in our lottery, we have a list of open seats only without pushing or tilting into a brand new section and a brand new staff member. The moment we take students beyond our capacity, we must open up a section. So that is something that is very delicate in the lottery process. That's why parents cannot pre-select their building. After buildings have been assigned, we do assign whole families. I don't know if this is helpful. Is this what you're asking, I think, maybe? But let's say if our kindergartner gets pulled and that kindergartner then has siblings that have also applied, we then go through the whole family before we go to the next kindergartner, if kindergarten is on the list that we're going through, because you want to keep all families at the same building. So it really is a very delicate, and I welcome anyone to come on the day of the lottery, and you can view in the audience, but it is a very delicate and systematic process that it goes slowly because we want to get it correct.
Very cool. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I want to come.
If you like a good spreadsheet, it's a good time.
Just to follow up on that, in years past, we've also held off with school of choice at 2 of the elementary schools. So siblings only at Graham and Auburn. And we're potentially lifting that this year for this process. And looking at the numbers, what we had planned to do has worked. The balance of school of choice has balanced out a little bit, where it was a little lopsided within the district at the elementary level. So percentage wise, we're looking at 18%, 18%, and 11%, not including Auburn. So those numbers are very encouraging for me for what we had set out to do. I just caution that we don't go back to where we were as we open that up a little bit more is the only thing I'll caution. And Ms. Monroe, I know the lottery is set up that way and we're looking at class sizes. We deliberately did this over the last couple of years to get to where we are now. I'd hate to undo it by not putting it into motion, so.
I concur with that. And I want to also stress that this is a proposal that has been built on a lot of intention and data based on our current achievement levels and dealing with enrollment throughout the pandemic. That soft pause that we talked about at the last meeting, I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't see like 3 years into the future, but I don't necessarily think that this approach will be the approach always in the future. I think it really is what both the families in the district that are currently enrolled and our prospective families and our resident families that are coming in at kindergarten, I believe it is an approach that will balance academic achievement, access, enrichment, and like everything from our intervention through our gifted and talented. We need something at a place that is going to elevate our teaching strategies, both from a resource point of view, but also be able to sustain the achievement. And I think that through past presentations, the board has learned of progress of our students during and in, well, I don't want to say post-pandemic because we're still here, but the significant impact of the pandemic uniquely situates us to look at school of choice with a more careful lens this year. But Sean, my bottom line, if my elevator summary is that I believe that this is a formula for a season of school of choice based on our current learning dynamics. I don't believe this is a long-term formula that would be applied for more than 2 or 3 years.
Okay, that provides some comfort then. Yeah, and I understand this is a little, not a shot in the arm, but an approach to deal with the current situation. It's not necessarily long-term, but just got to throw that caution out there.
Right. Good point. Well, and it's up for revision at any point in time as we move forward as well. Right? If we find that we're not getting the results that we had anticipated we'd be getting out of this method, then, we'll switch gears and pick another methodology. But this is, again, to underscore that, it's really a response to what we're seeing relative to student achievement, largely based on the last 18 months of the environment that our kids have been in. And how do we work to best give kids an edge by concentrating our resources and to move through to beyond grade level at those transition points. That is the goal. That's really the goal.
I'd also say, Dr. Shores, I don't know if you would agree with me or not, but it's also some small steps to on-time graduation for many of our students that are at critical points right now, like those transition grades and starting off and having a successful freshman year of high school or finishing middle school, having applied all the interventions and having had the students for 3 years. I think when we look long-term, I continue to go back to that 10th grade class that we'll have next year being at 320 odd something. I want to see all 327, I think it is, of those students walk across the stage when they're seniors. And that's just in 2 years. So these decisions that we're making, as minute as some of them feel, I think adds up to that completion rate of gaining a diploma, on-time graduation with their cohort.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm okay with that.
Any other questions? So this is a proposal that we want you to digest. Kind of zero in on all of the numbers and think about it. As you have questions, certainly let me know. This will be up for consideration on our next board agenda so that we can then send our proposal or, to Oakland Schools, which collects this information in the state. So,
When does the school of choice window open for enrollment?
so school of choice window, Mary Ann, you had a,
Yep, my recommendation is traditionally it opens in March or April following spring break. My recommendation that you'll see in your packet for next board meeting is that we start a week earlier than normal because it allows for 3 full cycles prior to August 1st of applications. And what I mean by that is the first wave of people in the lottery get notified. They have 30 days from notification to complete their enrollment pieces. And then if they don't, or if they've changed their mind, it then opens up for the next wave. So adding 1 more week, like going back a week early, allows us to get 3 full cycles in before administrators report in August, which is beneficial so that schedules can be built.
Great.
so again, it'll be around that spring break period. It'll just be a week earlier than what it traditionally has, but it will be that April to May timeframe. The state gives you 30 days of a window. And so it will be that 30-day window spanning from April into May.
As far as school of choice kids, what's the percentage of, I guess, the take rate of the SOC kids versus, well, are they more, what I'm trying to ask, are they more transient than the residents, or are the residents more transient than the school of choice?
So typically school of choice is more transient as a group. We note that while if we take school of choice students younger, those families tend to stay with us longer. If we take a school of choice older, and when I say older, I'm talking like middle school, high school, we see more transiency when we take them at that age. But if we bring them in at K1, 2, they tend to stay longer.
So the school of choice, when they're older, you can count them as a percentage of loss versus a percentage of just changing hands. I mean, you're not going to bring in more school of choice halfway through it. If we lose 5% of school of choice kids, kind of gone, and then we can't really count as another 5%.
They're gone.
Yeah,
Yeah, because the school of choice window would have been closed by the time they would have left.
Once they leave, they leave. There's no getting them back.
That's right.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. So what Mary Ann is talking about with the 3 periods is that you have your applicants that come in, they all have to apply on that 30-day window. But then they have a commitment And if they don't commit, then we can move to the next person on the list. So we set up those wait lists. And so, we have periods of going back to the wait lists. So asking for confirmations, going to the wait lists, bringing people forward, So that's all part of that process through the summer into August. Any other questions? All righty. So we will come back and revisit that then at our next meeting on the 24th. The next item I have under 3.4 is just an update on the OSHA staff vaccine order that currently is in front of the Supreme Court. That affects all employers of 100 or more employees. Avondale would be one of those. So in your packets, you have a variety of articles that kind of describe where the process has been, and I'm not going to go into all of the timeline factors, other than to say that we have begun the process here in the district of collecting vaccine verifications. And most of our employees have responded. We were given a January 10th deadline, which was Monday, or today, actually, to have that verification in. Michigan, or MyOSHA, has given the recommendation of the 24th of January. So that gives us a couple more weeks to get that in. February 9th would be the week that we would have to start testing for those folks who are not vaccinated, that are opting to undergo weekly testing versus vaccination. And we will have a few of those, and we will have testing set up in which they will be able to come to the board office and do that each week to have that testing. So all of that is in place and moving. And we'll see where the Supreme Court goes with it. I'm sure that that will be on the fast track for some decision-making. But we are prepared to move forward as if it is going to happen. We've been told by legal to proceed as if it's going to go forward. So, so we are abiding by that. I do want to make mention that it does include part-time. It also includes share time.
Okay.
As they collect an Avondale paycheck. And we also believe that it includes board members as well, because you also receive an Avondale paycheck. As small as that is. OSHA standards don't speak to how much that paycheck is. It says if you collect a paycheck. So, that vaccine verification will need to be had, again, should this move forward, from the Supreme Court. That will be something that we'll have to be asking you as well in terms of that verification factor. But share time is an interesting wrinkle in the situation, because we have employees in Westland.
Yeah.
And, Utica, and, so logistically, it's difficult for folks to come here and test. How does a teacher in Westland come here to test?
You send
Or
that.
us send to them.
Yeah.
So we are working out an arrangement with each of those schools to provide testing for those who are choosing that. Now, many of the share time teachers have already given us their vaccine verifications, but there will be a small amount of folks, 15-ish people, that will be opting to test. So we're arranging with those schools. We send the tests. Their school is going to have to obligate that, send us the results from their end, but with ours. But share time is an interesting wrinkle that folks didn't think about.
With share time, I'll call it homeschool. Their homeschool will be under the same requirement though, right?
Not necessarily.
Oh.
So if they're in the Lutheran organization,
Then they
that's
have less than 100
employees.
employees.
But we do have share time schools that are private schools that aren't 100 employees. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hence the wrinkle. I got it.
yeah,
Oh,
yep.
interesting.
Mhm.
So Mrs. Hyde's been working closely with the schools in collecting that information and moving forward. So there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. A lot of logistics.
So you would probably just need our vaccination.
So just a copy of your vaccination card. Yeah, that's all it takes to show your verification. So I just wanted to give that update to know that we are proceeding with that. Our employees have been very good about giving us, their vaccine cards or their intentions to test, whichever that may be. We're in line with that. Because February 9th will be here soon, which that testing has to commence. And of course, there are some stiff penalties for not abiding by the OSHA rules, financial penalties. So we want to make sure that we are certainly obliging by that compliance. Any questions in regards to that? Okay. And that is the superintendent's report that I have for today.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Schwartz. Lots of good information. Moving on to 4.0, our board reports, treasurer's report. Mr. Down, do you have anything for us this evening?
Nothing to report today.
Any committee reports? Dr. Schwartz, did you want to talk about the Woodland visit
Oh,
in this one here?
so so we did have a woodland listening visit that occurred last, what was it, Thursday? And we had 4 board members that had attended that meeting. With the staff, we also had our cabinet members as well attend. And it was a great visit to kind of uncover some of the highlights and points of pride of the goings on at Woodland, and also brought up a couple of concerns for us to move on in terms of improvement. We heard from an improvement standpoint about concerns with custodial and EnviroClean, particularly with staffing. So just like the rest of the world is having right now, issues with staffing, so is EnviroClean, which we heard, mostly from the night crew. It's difficult to get workers to begin with, and it's even more difficult to get workers to work night shifts. So even though we, have raised the rates for EnviroClean workers, it's difficult for folks to commit and work. And there's been a lot of the staff that we do get, there's a lot of turnover. And there's a lot of vacant positions within EnviroClean, and that has popped out in some frustration, certainly as was communicated with staff. And Woodland is no different than what we're experiencing in the buildings throughout the district, particularly again with nighttime custodial staffing. And I know that the day staff is working very hard to compensate for, the evening staff that isn't there. So we looked at bouncing off some ideas, perhaps looking at opening up opportunities for high school students that are interested in working a couple hours at night to empty waste baskets, perhaps, or vacuuming or doing things like that. You could earn some dollars by working a couple hours in the evening at a school.
Or school board members trying to pump that check up a little bit.
Yeah, or you want to push a vacuum or wipe desks or by any means, certainly we could use that assistance. Or opening it up to community as well. Any families that want to earn some extra dollars, that may be an avenue, a couple hours a night to come in and do some routine maintenance type tasks of cleaning, that would be a great thing. So we're exploring those opportunities. At least get us through this lull in staffing that we're all experiencing. So, and again, that's being felt throughout the district, not just at Woodland. So we're exploring that. The other concern that was voiced was about calendar, and I've also heard from parents, a few, in terms of looking at just the frustrations that half days create, extended or not extended.
Early release.
Release days create. When we have a lot of those, it was voiced that particularly school of choice families that have to travel don't attend on those days. So we note that our attendance is usually lighter on those days. So, as we look at calendar, are there ways that we can perhaps make full days from a couple of half days? And again, we've got to look at those variables, because as we do that, that may pop out in terms of hours and minutes of a day that we need to add somewhere else. Because right now the state counts a half a day as a full day in the day count. So there's a lot of variables that go in to what's required by the state. The state also requires a certain number of professional development hours of teachers that has to be put in the calendar. And so it's just, how do we divvy up those hours in a way that meets the best for the most people, knowing that we'll never make a calendar that'll please everybody. It's just impossible.
This is true.
But how can we do the best to please the most? So I think that was the message that we heard.
And I think I've heard some rumblings at the high school from an attendance standpoint on that same fashion. The parking lot's a little more empty on those half days or early release days for sure when I pass it by.
Yeah.
And I think at the elementary level too, we run into the same issues outside of Woodland. We run into the same issues. Some families just are like, it's a half a day.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth the drive, right? Especially if parents have to take kids off or get off of work to be able to make that happen. Sometimes it's just not worth it, stay home. So it's just something to take in consideration.
Yeah. So those were the couple of major concerns I think that we heard. The highlights in terms of some of the points of pride, again, a lot boiled down to just the efforts of staff, the choice of staff, in terms of the quality of new teachers that are being hired, some of the brain spring programs, some of the phonics types of programs that we're integrating are strong. And just the overall efforts of staff. Math camps, math camp was very successful. That's been running well to help catch kids up on some of the foundational math skills that they were missing primarily from being remote last year. So there's a lot of effort to help catch kids up. It was also reported that the kids, at least at Woodland, are not as far behind as what we may have thought they were as they get into the nitty-gritty of standards and benchmarking where the students are at. So specials, we heard a lot from the efforts of specials and having building designated specials teachers where they don't have to travel from building to building to building, but being home centered in a school certainly helps to build the consistency of instruction within art and music and PE in the buildings. So other things that I may have missed.
The Oakland University Mentoring
Oh,
Program.
the Oakland University Mentor Program, thank you. So they are a pilot school for the new cohort programs at OU with the certification changes that are going about. And so there are 8 mentor students that are at Woodland that are also spending part of their course time in classrooms, working with individual and small groups of students, which the teachers have voiced have been very valuable. And also student teachers from that perspective as well being placed in the school that are working quite well. That helps to add to the talent pool and hopefully to new hires as we move forward. So having that training ground in our district, in our schools, helps in, again, that recruitment as positions become available, vacancies arise.
For sure.
To recruit our new crop of folks.
Also underlined for us what we're seeing with school of choice in terms of when they come in and the catching up that's needed, which really goes along with Ms. Monroe's findings as well.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Yep, that did come up as well. Yeah. Yep. And from the top of my head, those are the
You nailed it.
details as I remember.
Thank you.
A good visit.
But it was a good visit. It was great.
Great.
And staff is doing a great job. So we really appreciate their efforts and the time that they took to meet with us on Thursday.
They're all very passionate.
Yeah, they are. They
Definitely.
certainly are.
Nothing else. Moving on to 4.3 school visits. Do we have any school visits?
And outside of.
Holiday
That
probably.
one's-
Just Woodland for some of you. All right, great. I will move on to agenda item 5.0, which is citizens' request to address the board. This is a time for public participation during the meeting. This is a one-way communication, and the Board of Education and or administrative staff will follow up with you as needed for any questions or concerns that you have. We ask that you limit your statement to 3 minutes in length, and everyone gets one turn only to make some comments. Judging by the fact that it's very cold out tonight and there is nobody here live in our audience, we'll go straight to Zoom. So at the bottom of your screen, there is a reactions button. If you click on that reactions button, there is a raise hand button. If you want to go ahead and click that, if you'd like to make a citizen's request to address the board, that would be great. If for some reason you're having technical difficulty, please pop on your camera and wave your arms at us and give us a sign, and we'll be sure to make sure you're recognized. Up, and I do see a familiar face to us. Julie.
Good evening, board. As you're all well aware, I can't participate in debate and voting while I'm still on the mend, but I did want to be one of the first to congratulate Mr. Tischer, Ms. Washington, Ms. Brault, Mr. Down on your elections as officers. I think that's a wonderful slate. And I also want to thank this board and the administration for the opportunity to have served as your president for the last 2 years. It was truly my honor, and I look forward to working with you all. I certainly hope that I'm strong enough to be back in person. It's very much my goal that next meeting that I'll be back in person with you all. So I may still be in a sling and a brace, but after being broken, but I'm hoping to be there. So congratulations again to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Thanks, Terry.
Get well soon.
Get well soon. Anybody else? Again, there is a reactions button. If you click on that at the bottom of your screen, and then there's a raise hands feature. Is there anyone else? Again, if you're having issues, feel free to come on video and give us a high sign and we'll get you on. All right, not seeing anyone. Going once, going twice. All right, we'll go ahead and close citizens' request to address the board. Moving on to action items 6.0.
All righty, so we have our action items for this evening under 6.1, our consent agenda. Get to my page here, we have the consideration of our board meeting minutes from our regular meeting of December 20th, 2021, and the consideration of our closed session of students A and B of December 2021. I recommend that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda or those meeting minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Johnson. Oh, sorry. Second by Ms. Washington. Discussion. I do have one change on page 36, just at the end. We have Mr. Lang's name from the last meeting. It should be my name just at the end. It was just a quick oversight. So if we can just make that correction in the regular meeting minutes, that would be great. Besides that, I'm all set there. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. Washington,
Yes.
Ms. Brault,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Down.
Yes.
Mr. Tischer is an aye. The motion carries.
All right, moving on to 6.2, our non-consent items. Under 6.2A, accept a resignation. I recommend the Board of Education accept the voluntary resignation of Christine Meldrum, special education at Avondale High School, effective January 10th, 2022.
So support.
Moved by Ms. Washington, support by Ms. Davis. Any discussion on that one? Hearing none. Ms. Washington,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Brault,
Yes.
Mr. Down,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
and Mr. Tischer is aye. The motion carries.
All right, moving on to 6.2B, approve high school video game design course. I recommend that the Board of Education approve the high school video game course or design course proposal as was presented at our last meeting.
I'll move.
Support.
Moved by Ms. Brault, supported by Mr. Down. Discussion.
I'll just say for this full slate of the high school proposals, I love the idea of the new classes that we're bringing in general. So I'll just say that across the board. And so I don't have to say it every time.
The business communications class is one that's truly needed.
Mm.
So that would be good. And I think that video game one will be great as well. So to bring in more students. So
Yep,
I think we're looking at a good slate of classes.
I agree. Any other discussion on the video game? Video game course curriculum, I should say. Yes.
Development.
Right.
Element,
The
yes.
design course.
Design course, yes, sorry. Ms. Brault,
Yes.
Mr. Down,
Yes.
Ms. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. Washington.
Yes.
And Mr. Tischer is aye. The motion carries.
All right, under 6.2C, approve the high school business communications course. I recommend that the Board of Education approve the high school business communications course proposal as was presented.
I'll move.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Down, second by Ms. Davis. Discussion on this one.
I think it's an awesome course. I think can be a great feather in our cap, and a good promotional tool.
Great. Great. All right, here no other discussion. Mr. Down,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Brault,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Washington,
Yes.
and Mr. Tischer is aye. The motion carries.
All right, moving on to 6.2D, approve the high school environmental science or AP environmental science course proposal. I recommend the Board of Education approve the high school environmental science, AP environmental science course proposals as was presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Johnson,
I'll support.
seconded by Ms. Brault. Discussion. on This one.
Stuff.
All good stuff still. Yeah. All right, hearing none. Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. Brault.
Yes.
Ms. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Down.
Yes.
Ms. Washington.
Yes.
And Mr. Tischer is an aye. The motion carries.
All right, and our last action item for the evening is 6.2E, approving the high school philosophy course proposal. I recommend the Board of Education approve the high school philosophy course proposal as was presented.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Ms. Washington, supported by Mr. Down. Discussion on this one.
Yeah, I think it's a great step in the right direction. Kind of opened my eyes, Mr. Rick.
Brian Bring.
Opened my eyes to that, the whole philosophy course, and it just, it's got some advantages to it. I think it's a great course. It's going to do some good
Lead that critical thinking route.
thinking.
Yeah, that critical thinking route.
I like that.
Our ethics poll is gonna rule.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
Absolutely. Any other discussion? All right, Ms. Washington,
Yes.
Mr. Down,
Yes.
Ms. Brault,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
and Mr. Tischer is an aye. The motion carries. All right. And 7.0 are discussion items.
So we have a couple of discussion items this evening. One is revising our old antiquated test out policy, the high school. So in your packets, there is, and also at your place settings, there's a policy revision for the high school test out proposal. Now, the old proposal, which or the old policy, I should say, that is in your packet, states that on a test out, that students that would score between 77 and 89% would not be granted credit. Only about 90% on that score would be granted credit. That now flies in the face of what changes there has been in the law regarding test outs, where we do have to supply credit for a C+ or greater, which is 77% or up. So this new policy proposal incorporates new wording from the law that grants credit on that test out from 77% on up. Also, one thing just to note on the GPA is that while you have a test out, the GPA is neutral. So the students get a G on their transcript for a successful test out. So it doesn't, it becomes a neutral factor when calculating the GPA. But you can see on the policy proposal, what's in blue on the screen is the new language that we would add to be in line with what the new law would require us. So you can see, first of all, we would allow up to 3 times in the school year. The prior policy said 2. We're going to give more opportunity for students to test out. So it's up to 3 times each school year. And then again, from a 77% and higher, those students would be able to move on in their course sequence, receive a G on their transcript. If you less than a 77%, then they do need to take the course from which they're taking the test for. So if they're trying to test out of Algebra 1, they don't get 77%, well, then they got to
Have to take Algebra.
So what's in blue is what we would propose adding to the policies so that we are in line with the legal aspect of the percentages, and then also adding additional opportunities by 3 times each school year. Now, if you can switch to the administrative guidelines, changes there. So just to spell out in the administrative guidelines, which you don't approve the guidelines, you only approve policies. But this is just for your knowledge that in going with that policy proposal, these would be the changes in the administrative guidelines that would be reflected. So yes, the 77% language is there, but then you will also see in bullets what the test out procedure and deadlines would be. So in terms of teachers providing materials to the students.
So you have to change that attempt to 3 times now?
That would need to be 3 times. Yeah, that should be 3, not twice. So that's a good catch. So that second bullet should say 3. So thank you for that. Make a note of that. Right. So each session test, they can take 2, but there's 3 times a year that they can take those tests. So we just need to clarify that there. So thank you for bringing that up. So these will be the procedures. Again, these aren't in the policy, but these just become what's reflected in the administrative guideline changes as a result of that policy adoption. I think
Same catch on the bottom, the maximum number of tests the student may request each
each
test
section is 2. So they can
Only
take 2
They can only
tests.
take
but
up to 3 times each time. Okay, I'm good.
So Ms. Brunei, is there anything that we are missing? I think she was on.
Yes.
Yep, she is.
Yeah, now I'm on. No, I think that you have it all. There was that one typo about twice a year, but
Yeah.
these are just the administrative guidelines. As far as the policy goes, it aligns now with Michigan law, and there was that that kind of area where kids were passing the test but not getting the credit. That was very confusing on transcripts for colleges.
That's what I was gonna ask. How does that G transfer to colleges? Is that,
That's not, that part isn't confusing. The colleges recognize a pass fail, especially after the pandemic. It's just very common to have pass fail grades. So that's a passing grade.
okay,
Not all schools use that code, but you know, they understand and recognize that it's described on the transcripts. It's that threshold that you either pass it or you fail it. That's what we need to have on there, not some sort of gray area where you don't really get credit, but you get to move on to the next course. That was what was confusing about the last policy.
so if a student gets a 76 on the test, that would not show up on their transcript at all?
Correct. The test itself does not show up on the transcript at all. Whether they took it does not show up. So if they get the credit, then that shows up that can show up and they get that credit for that course.
Okay,
But the failed attempts do not.
okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Related but not the same, the high school exam requirements, the testing out of the exams, did that, finals? Yeah, the finals. Did that change recently also? I thought-
Testing out of finals?
Right, having a
From,
Incentive that we.
As an attendance incentive?
I think, because I thought, and as, again, I know I'm getting up there in age, but.
There wasn't attendance incentive.
Right, and I thought that it was if you had the intent for exams was not to hurt any students, which was great.
Right.
If you had, I thought it was a C or better, you had the option to take the exams. And now I think it's like an A or better, you have the option to take?
that's always 95 at the high school. It was a 95%.
Is that what it was?
But it was only seniors, and I believe we opened it up, didn't
We
we?
did open it up,
So-
yeah.
I think it's
More
only
grades.
seniors
Is-
this year.
I think they closed it back down to just
I'd
seniors
have to
again.
investigate with Mr. Wilson to see what
Okay.
it's at.
I think he said it.
Ms. Brunei, do you know about test outs of where that currently is at the high school?
We haven't discussed it lately, but I am heading over to the high school on Wednesday and can check it out.
Okay,
Okay.
maybe just a quick update of if there's any changes, Ms. Brunei, that's all. Especially,
No
with-
problem.
Senior.
you know I'm here.
We'll get you an update on
All right,
where
thank
that
you.
currently stands. Just making a note.
Mhm.
So we'll find
Again,
out,
just-
we'll send that to you so that where that currently.
Oh, yeah,
stands.
that's that email I didn't read.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, any other questions on the test out policy proposal? So this is a first reading. We'll have it next board meeting for a second reading. So if there's questions, certainly let me know. The last item I have on here under 7.2 is the student representative. How we want to frame sort of the functioning of that individual. So Sarah Vanna will be joining us next time. That's when the official start of the next semester begins. So he'll be joining us at the table as our student rep. And so there's a number of things I just want to review that when we set up that opportunity for a student, kind of what that would look like. So we had voiced that, again, he would participate as a non-voting member of this body. And that it would be an individual who would bring the student voice to topics that are being discussed, whether they be in the superintendent's report or whether they be in the discussion section of the agenda, but somebody that would offer a perspective coming from the students. And then he would take, or that individual would take information back to inform his class currently at the high school. Kind of interweave goings on here in the class back at the high school. So I guess my questions for, as we continue to frame that experience is, we talked about perhaps that individual having the ability to introduce topics to put on the agenda. So I guess I want to kind of tap your thoughts about that. How do we want that to, what kind of procedure do we want to establish perhaps for that?
Thinking out loud, I would think since the president and the superintendent get together to basically put that agenda together, I think similar to what, if any other board member were have any feedback into that as a suggestion, and leave it upon you guys to kind of weed that out and say whether or not it's a topic that needs to be discussed or not, or is it a discussion issue, whether it's a straight topic. But I'd lean it on as a normal recommendation that we would have as a board members too.
Okay, so if Saravana wanted to put a topic on the agenda, he would confer with
President.
Mr. Tischer and myself, put that on the agenda.
Agreed. And if you guys agree,
That's what everybody,
Under the procedural timeframe, I think that we all follow for submittal of,
yeah, agree,
for the agenda.
agree.
Right, have them follow the same thing that we would follow if we wanted to place an item on the agenda. 3 days, 5 days, so,
It's up 3-5 days.
yeah, there's something like that, yeah. I would have to go back and look.
okay.
But- Or something, you know. I think,
Simple, right?
All right.
And I balance that too with what the other and I'm sure you guys would do this already, but balancing that with the other conversations and if it might make sense for a future meeting, you know, when maybe we have a jam-packed meeting
Right.
or something more topical that's similar to it, you know, maybe on the docket.
absolutely, yeah. We don't want to get to a page 2
Right.
of the agenda. We
That'd
want
be
to
good.
keep it to one page, same font size.
Oh, same.
Same font size.
George is clever.
Emergency.
A half size smaller, we'd never noticed.
Right.
I noticed.
He said, this is, yeah, right there.
My readers.
Right.
Gonna be a problem.
Right.
So, so that brings me to the flip side of the conversation. So, if there are items perhaps that the board would like feedback from the student body on for Saravana in this case to bring forward, what becomes of that procedure?
We definitely need to give them a heads up.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I mean, if there's an individual on the board or a group or whomever that would like to tap the interest on some topic that from the high school perspective, again, is that a conversation that comes to Mr. Tischer and I to then approach Saravana on, to then place on the agenda? Or I'm just trying to look at
The flip flop.
if you want him to, what items you want him to go back and bring, or what
I think-
items he wants to bring, or,
I think it's best that we be consistent
That part.
and he continues to work with Mr. Tischer and yourself.
Agreed. Keep it
That
simple.
keeps consistency. And that way there won't be any confusion.
And it may be a discussion that starts here, you know, so something may come up and we may say, hey, I wonder how the students feel about that, right? And then if we have that discussion here, Mr. Tischer may say, hey, let's see if we can get some feedback, you know, that type of thing. It wouldn't necessarily have to be like everything else, it wouldn't have to be a formal written down process or anything like that. But if we bring it up in discussion and we all give that nod of approval, I think we may be able to run with
Kind of can
that.
take it as a, yeah, takeaway and go, yep. And then we can
Okay.
Give them a time frame, say either next board meeting or the following board meeting, or give them.
You can find out.
Because I know there's a number of items, particularly under the board priority, that I'm surmising you may want to know student voice and perspective on.
And
From a diversity standpoint, from a, there's probably some things there that we want to garner some information. So I just want to make sure there's a process in place for how we.
And we want to be able to filter them too, right? We don't want everything to go, every request to go to him. So we got to have Mr. Tischer and that little bit of a buffer to kind of filter some of that out.
Okay.
And I would think maybe Dr. Schwartz, you and I might want to meet with him on a regular basis too, as well, too, especially at the start here.
At the start.
As we start to go through this, to get him up to speed as well, too. And then we can build a cadence. After a while, if he gets comfortable, he might not need it as often, or, we can figure that out.
Make sure he feels comfortable and welcome before he gets into this environment.
Yeah.
So we do have a committee that's our welcoming, or our, what is it, the
Invitation committee.
orientation committee?
That new board member.
And certainly it's slightly different than your regular board member, but
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We could have him go through the new board member orientation. So that would be you, Mr. Johnson,
Mr. Johnson and Ms. Davis.
and Ms. Davis.
I condensed.
I don't want to move them on.
Keep them.
I want to put them through the whole.
Scary mall.
No,
Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
us, we were like, whoa.
Digest version.
Give a pile of papers.
Yeah.
I
give him-
like that idea. though.
Yeah.
Give him, go walk.
Discussion, Ms. Sprawl. Yep.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Good idea. I
That's a
like that,
good
Ms. Broad.
Kevin's got all the ideas today.
Yeah.
It's our light bulb.
Right. That's a great idea. So we'll do that because then we can roll out some of the basics of the strategic
absolutely.
plan, the board goals, so to give them a frame of reference of things to think about.
So the other thing, it's not on any of the materials that we were given, but I was curious if it would maybe be optional for him or by invitation for him to join some of the committees. So if we're talking about something in
Yeah.
particular,
Mhm.
So
or if he has a particular interest.
I like that part.
that was going to be
Yeah.
my next question was involvement on committees or perhaps invitations to workshops. Like we have a workshop coming up, I think on the 25th.
Yes.
To discuss, again, our book study or being involved in the book study.
Thing is, an invite, not a mandatory,
I
for
was gonna
sure.
say that, no
Yeah.
pressure. though.
Yeah, no
pressure.
pressure, but I think extending the invite
Yeah.
from a committee
But you're
standpoint.
not opposed to an invite.
Oh, not at
No.
all.
No,
Okay.
no.
All right.
I mean, they're open to the public.
They are.
And we can send him the list of committees and, explain to him what committees do what and see what he might be interested in.
Okay. Glad I'm asking the questions. It just helps us to
Yeah.
kind of create the path. Anything else that is on your mind about that student position, the role, the functioning, anything else that you're questioning or thinking about? I'm sure there'll be some things as we go, but
Right.
it's new territory for us.
I think let's start from there and then
Yeah,
we can build on that as we go.
okay.
What is his term? Is it?
He'll be with us. Yeah, he'll be with us for the semester. So he'll be with us through the board meetings in June. Okay. So that's all I have for discussion items for this evening.
Thank you. Future meetings.
So our future meetings, our next meeting is the 24th and it's scheduled at the middle school. And I guess I posed that as a question. Do we, based on the current COVID environment, do we stay here or do we try and move our show to the middle school? that
Too bad the
night?
camera was on you, Johnson.
Gotta be careful these days.
You're right.
I don't know, again, I'm trying to weigh the current COVID environment, trying to weigh technology. Thoughts?
My personal opinion is that this is not a good time to take it on the road. That's my personal opinion. I'm not sure how everyone else feels.
That's why I'm putting the question out there.
Plus, we're
I'd like
not
to
sure, we're still working with
discuss.
getting the bugs out of the system. Am I correct?
We have the equipment ready to go, so. And then you
But
point,
it took us.
It is
It took like 20 minutes today.
we know why that happened, but we won't dive in.
Let's make sure we have it perfect here before we take it on the road.
Is, to that point, is this the same equipment that's traveling?
That camera will go, and then we have 4 additional mics ready to go.
Okay,
So it is portable.
It'll be the same setup, just
same, similar setup.
So having not traveled, I mean, is there a bigger audience when you travel? Or
Typically, when we're in the buildings, there is
It can't be,
in-seat, larger in-seat audience.
can't be.
Because the
Teachers.
parents and teachers from that district, from that school like to
Will
come
show
because
up.
it's easier. So they'll show up a little bit more.
That's why I say from a
Can we
COVID
reschedule?
perspective, because there will be people.
Yeah,
Can we reschedule? So maybe just push the date back a bit?
That's two of them. huh?
We've missed a couple of them because
Yeah.
just of,
That's what we're running into.
we didn't have the technology available to do that. I mean, it's possible we could delay it, push it out.
Or we stay consistent and try again in August?
What are other thoughts, I guess?
That's not one person.
I can go either way. So whatever pleasure the board is, I can go either way with this one.
I'm boosted.
Yeah, same here. So,
Well, I'm kind of hearing we should probably stay put
Yeah, I think that's what.
the next one.
now. I mean, we can always reevaluate as we go,
Okay.
but based on the current environment, based on the new technology, getting that right, getting it. Perhaps maybe this next one.
Warmer and the cases die.
So stay here then
I
for
guess
the
let's-
24th.
That's what I
Okay,
I just wanted to catch your opinions on that.
I agree.
sound good to everyone?
Sounds good.
Yep, seen head nodding.
I like it.
Cool. All right. We'll be back here on the
And
24th.
then we have and then on the 25th, we have our book study, which will, this was a reschedule from last month. Things just got so crazy with the holidays and that, so. So the 25th, we're reading up to page 152, remember, in the book. So that's
So
where,
that's me.
We're listening depending on.
or listening if you've got the
Oh, you got it?
cassette version,
It is on audible.com.
Cassette
the
version.
8-track version.
The 8-track.
Got the 8-track version of the book. And then February 7th will be our next regular meeting after that. So
A quick question. Do we have any further listening stops?
we do,
do.
I don't have those on the top of my head, but I know we do have other listening visits scheduled.
I
Hector.
No, but I thought it was May, maybe. There might be one in.
Yeah.
There's one March.
George, if you could resend
Yeah,
those
I didn't-
lists.
We'll
I don't
resend.
know where that was, but.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we can
We
read.
spaced them every other month, I think.
Yeah.
So there was January, March, and May, I believe.
May is the high
I
school.
think, Julie, did you send that out?
May is at the high school.
Okay. So Scott, if you can resend that, that would be great to the group.
Yep,
So we all have that
yep.
In my calendar.
plan. Anything else under meetings? All right, board comments. I will take volunteers. Who would like to start us off with board comments?
I'll go.
Davis, all you.
So at our school visit at Woodland, at our listening visit, it occurred to me that this was our first full year as board members for the new elected.
It is.
I don't know if it went fast or slow, but it went.
You started your second year.
Yes, so I am thankful for the experience thus far and highly reflective and hoping to find my purpose this year. Stay warm, everyone.
Let's go right, I guess. Go
All
ahead.
right, I'll jump in. Agreed. The school visit was nice. They hosted very well. I had great feedback on points of pride. And those are always good to hear.
Yeah.
But also like to hear the other side of the coin, which they were free with too. So we love to have those kind of conversations on what potential improvements we can make within the district or where they see issues at. Otherwise, great classes that we're bringing forward at the high school. Another great proposal today from the GATE program on what they're going to bring forward. I love the fact that CPR and babysitting is going to be taught in the course. That's actually phenomenal for me. So I'm enjoying that. And Mr. Lang, looking forward to seeing you up here on the dais, sir. So get well and look forward to seeing you. Everybody stay warm. Thank you. Happy New Year. Oh, wait a minute. I said it earlier. I'm gonna just reemphasize. This is as Ms. Davis mentioned, this is their first full year.
Oh.
This is my last full year. I'll say it again. Beautiful. This is starting my 13th year on the board. It's the longest job I've ever had in my life, outside of being a husband and a family member. Okay. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. But as my son graduates in May, I think it's time for me to pass the baton to somebody else. So I will not be running for reelection in November. Stop looking at me, Dr. Shores. But it's been a pleasure. We'll have the rest of the year to talk about it. But just
Put you in as a write-in.
You probably would win.
That's why I said, please don't do that.
I'm gonna put you in as a write-in.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Ms. Washington.
Yes, I'm going to echo what Ms. Davis said. I did enjoy the Woodland staff. It was very informative. I also have learned a lot this year. It has been a true experience. I don't think I didn't expect some of the things that occurred, but I've enjoyed the classes and the workshops that I've had the opportunity to attend. And I love talking to the other school board members from the different schools in the county. I learned so much from them as well. So I do appreciate the opportunity for this, and I'm hoping I will get better as time goes on. And I appreciate my board members who have helped me and answered questions and looked at me like I was crazy sometimes when I have that puzzle on my face, but that's okay. And I do appreciate everything, and I want everyone to stay warm as well, because it's cold outside.
Thanks, Ms. Washington. Ms. Brault.
Yes, I definitely echo my fellow board members' comments. First year, it definitely went by like what happened kind of thing. But definitely, I'm in great company here, and shout out to, gosh, I'm blanking, to Terry. I was thinking, Chip, I've already replaced the anyway, shout out to Terry. What an amazing, presence you've had on this board, and just your leadership has been immensely helpful to me personally, and really appreciated you. In terms of things that we talked about tonight, I think that life skills course is really great, and I don't know if the middle school people are listening, and that's something that could be duplicated there, but it seems like just one of those things that is really important, especially in our pandemic times where people have these social needs and that type of thing. And just looking forward to starting a new year, and let's just I'll do this, get it, I don't know, just I'm hoping that it's like normal. And okay, anyway, I'm ready to go to bed. So next.
Thanks, Ms. Brault. Mr. Down.
Echo my colleagues' comments. Yeah, first and foremost, congratulations to Ms. Davis, Ms. Washington, and Ms. Brault for their first full year as a board member. That seems like just yesterday. I think it was just yesterday, and I was there. And yeah, you just continue to learn and try to figure this out. We all do it together. And I'm still my third year, and I'm still waving my new guy card, new guy question. And it just never stops. You just continue to learn every single day. Thanks to the administration and staff for all their work. I know it's just difficult out there. You're acknowledged and you're appreciated for sure. Good presentation from Kate Martin and Rachel Breeden on your life skills. Again, another boost for a great program as it is. And also the continuous improvement with adding the new courses to the high school. Fantastic new courses to, again, expand our kids' minds and get them further prepared for adulthood. Yeah, Terry, and very appreciated and an incredible leader to the board, and you'll definitely be missed. But yeah, not without acknowledgement and appreciation for everything that you've done and you've taught me, as well as the board members. I think we all felt very secure with you in the president's chair. And also I'd like to welcome our new president, Mr. Tischer, and wish him luck, and I'll give him the support that he needs. And I think that's about it. Stay warm and stay healthy, everyone, and see you next week, next meeting.
Well, thank you. I'll go ahead and wrap us all up. First of all, I want to thank my board colleagues for entrusting me with the presidency of the board and for the team of officers below. And thank you. And to Mr. Lang, I hope I have some pretty big shoes to fill, and I hope I can fill those shoes, because I would always send Terry an email if I had a question. He would always come back with the answer pretty quickly and always had that. So I'll definitely be looking to Mr. Lang for advice going forward as well too. So get better soon, Terry. Hope to see you back here on the 24th at our next board meeting. To the staff, hang in there. It's just gotten tough again, but you guys are doing a great job. Stick with it. I think we've been saying that now for almost 2 years now. I hope this stops sometime soon. I really do. Great presentations tonight. I'm glad to see we're passing some unique coursework and curriculum. The life skills is great. I think we still have at Meadows, the old home ec kitchens are still in place there. So I think they can possibly still do those cooking demonstrations in the home ec. I took home ec in there actually back when I was in 7th or 8th grade, believe it or not. So glad to see those so they can actually go down and use them. And they used to have sewing machines in there, because I remember sewing in home ec. So
Daughter did that.
anyway, so absolutely. And then of course, blessings, can't go a meeting without talking about blessings. So we are still packing New Year, still raising money. So if you're interested, we have Sign Up Genius on there. We do have, I think, open spots for later on in the year. We're practicing social distancing. If you do volunteer, and you will need to be Raptor when you come in, so they'll take your ID and check you out before they let you into the school. And you do have to come in through the gate entrance, which is a change due to our new security policies. But we are still packing. We have the amount of donations, I think I said over the holidays was incredible. So we have food that's almost flowing off the shelves at this point. So working on getting that all distributed, and of course, working on fundraising as well too. I did want to point out one last thing. As you board members know, Dr. Schwartz does put down the timing of all this, and he had us adjourning at 10 o'clock, and it is going to be 9:27 here for the adjournment. I just wanted to point that out. Stay safe, everyone. Stay warm. Have a great night, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Night,
you,
everyone. Good
everyone.
night.
Good night.